You're there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
It's clear. How was your weekend?
It's slow for sure,
Yes.
but I guess that's expected
Yeah,
considering all circumstances.
true. There's
Yeah,
quite a lot has changed. Pretty much everything.
well, everything has changed.
Everything has
Uh,
changed, and yeah, I'm curious to know from your end if you think this is a change that is temporary, or we'll have to adapt to a new way of doing things completely going forward.
I definitely think that I don't know. I think it's one of those that's a bit uncertain, but I think considering that we beat bigger plagues with minimum resources
Yes.
in the past, and we have advanced in technology and healthcare,
Yes.
I believe we'll get over it soon, sooner
That's
than
true.
later.
That's true. And what exactly are you doing to keep yourself safe from contracting the virus?
I think it's just the same instructions, just one. Um, I've decided that I'm only reading information from the World Health Organization and
Yes, for
CDC
credibility. Yes.
and just government updates, because the first few days was a bit difficult sifting between fake news and the actual news, and that was
Yes.
very bad for like hysteria and panic. But so like by controlling the type of information that I'm consuming, that's the first thing that I had to do. And then I guess for me, I think it's not very difficult. Okay. I think it's a bit difficult. It's a hard way to deal with things. So, okay, so I'll talk about my habits. So one, on information. I've weaned the amount of information I'm consuming about the virus itself.
Okay.
Practicing all the, social distancing and washing my hands and, looking and observing my own personal health to see if, showing any symptoms. Considering I was at an airport 2 days after we had our first case here. But so far, so good. Unfortunately, I also have allergies. So sneezing and coughing is a norm.
Yeah. I can imagine the kind of maybe thoughts you might have anytime you sneeze.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's why I had to start only consuming specific type of information, because you start reading all these things about how people. Yeah. And so that was one. Second thing is I have still stuck to my routine in terms of the time that I wake up and the time I go to bed, because I figured if I do, take this as a holiday,
yes,
it might be a bit difficult for me to readjust when things are back to normal. So I still wake up at my time, do a bit of yoga in the morning, and then start my day in terms of working remotely. I do facilitate a lot of incubators, and so I have some sessions that were supposed to be in person. So I've had to do them online, which has been a bit of a learning experience. And then the final thing is just looking at my business and seeing how this moment can, what I can do to prepare for what happens next in terms of supporting businesses, having conversations with investors, having conversations with the right stakeholders in the space, just to see, what's the general mood? Should we all be suddenly innovating around healthcare and education, or can we continue with our, business?
Yeah.
So I think those are the three things. Controlling my information, maintaining my routine, and just working.
Working from home. You mentioned the allergies, and it reminded me of a friend who's in Botswana. So about 3 weeks ago, she had traveled to the US, and when she got back to Botswana, she was asked to self-quarantine. So been isolation for about 10 days now. So when I had a call with
Wow.
her a few days back, she was telling me it's crazy. It's not something that you'd wish on anyone to be on
Yeah.
self-quarantine, because
Yeah.
anytime you feel something in your body, it kind of makes you hallucinate. So just thinking,
Yeah.
okay, maybe this is it.
Yeah. That's
It's
true.
it's unfortunate, but I think she's well. Because
I
there's not
hope
been any
she.
recorded, there's not been any recorded cases in Botswana so far, and sure
Okay.
she'll be okay. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So
I think we all will be in the long run. Now the question is,
mhm,
how long is that going to take? Are
yeah.
we underestimating the extent of this virus?
Hmm.
So there's certain things, and so what I realize is I am not a doctor. I don't know
Yeah.
how to treat it.
Hmm.
I just know how to prevent, a bigger spread. So I just need to have my own civil responsibility to ensure that I'm not, party to making this harder for our doctors.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to go. Way to go. And I think when you mentioned controlling the sources of information, it's very vital, because a lot of the misinformation that has been going around, especially in Africa, considering the low cases that have been recorded and almost, very few deaths, is there was a lot of belief in quite a lot of people that this virus was not going to harm any black person, so to speak. And
True.
and it's the kind of belief that has spread, and people really have gotten to take it in, which is very unfortunate, considering that maybe part of the reason it's not gotten here, or, hit here so hard yet, is because of the lag and the
Of
fact that
course.
we don't have a lot of movement within the continent, as
That's true.
compared to places like Europe or the US, which are
Yeah,
kind of getting the heat at the moment. So
that's true.
getting the right source of information is very vital to ensure that we
Yeah.
increase chances of survival for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you think this is going to impact your African startups going forward, maybe in the foreseeable couple of months?
Mm, I think that's a good place to start the conversation, because it's something that I would say for the past 1 week, within my network, this is a conversation that we've had in depth and in passing. What we really started realizing is, and this I would mention, one of the sessions I had yesterday was with early stage founders who are looking to set up their businesses. And I think there's JP Morgan said one thing: there's two decisions that inform the human mind, and that's the good one and the real one. And
Okay.
sometimes I feel entrepreneurs are stuck in the good one, which is, oh, great, we have this savior mentality and we
Yes.
are doing good. And we forget the real one. And the real one
Yeah.
here is, how is your business actually performing? Do you have enough money flowing in your business to handle a crisis like this, or are you actually generating revenue? I feel like
Yeah.
there's sometimes a disconnect when you look at our business models, not only for African entrepreneurs, but just entrepreneurs in general,
Yeah.
because we get a lot of our inspiration on running businesses from the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks and all these people who've defied norms. And so
Yes.
sometimes we are stuck in this lovely bubble of, I'm defying norms, I'm a rebel.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
when the rubber meets the road, case in point, Corona, we are
Yes.
in panic mode, because we're like,
Yeah.
wait, am I actually running a business, or this is a hobby? Or am I call them, am I a pitchpreneur? Do you have a
Yeah.
lovely story of which problem you're solving? But when we go deeper, there's certain things that need to be realigned. So one of the things is, definitely, I would say, for entrepreneurs in small businesses, I think this is the time to think about, how to collaborate better to reduce your cost and become more efficient. This is the time to build company policies that make you a better working organization. For example, are we building companies that will be able to pay people when we have an outbreak? Or do you have a policy that allows your employees to work from home? I think one of the interesting things that I've gained from a lot of the founders in my network is a lot of them are like, this is not different from my usual way of doing things, because a lot of us do work remotely and really, are stuck within our spaces to build and, work. But I think the biggest one for me is just we need to take a deep, get a bit more serious with how we look at our businesses. Are our business models airtight? And can they survive with or without funding? And then that brings me to the second thing of how the pandemic is affecting startups. It's definitely on investment. And this is a conversation we just had 2 days ago with Techstars. We had a Comcast with different female founders in the space of venture building and venture investment. And one of the biggest things is, so how is this going to change how investors react to the uncertainty and the recession and the global economy taking a dive? And the biggest, we've had these conversations with investors who are in the middle of signing term sheets or people who are very interested in investing in certain startups that we have. And of course, they'll give you the assurance of, oh, great, we're definitely going to still invest. But at the end of the day, an investor is still a human being. And this is their personal money sometimes, or this is a group of people who have put together a pool of funds to invest in startups. So I think, one, it's going to be a little bit harder for startups to raise money, at least this year. Unless you're in the gaming space, the ed tech space, the health tech space. Maybe it might be a good time or video conferencing space. Maybe that's a good time for an investor to put in money, but even still, I think it might be a bit harder for people to raise money. And so I would say for a startup founder, it would be great for you to keep having these conversations with your investor or potential investor so that you can become memorable in the midst of this all. I think the biggest thing is not necessarily to say, hi, we are raising money. I think it's now to get them more aware about what you're doing. And I think, that's that. And then finally, it's an opportunity for startup founders to talk to their customers or the people that they think are their customers. Because people are on their phones, people are at home, people are not necessarily sticking to their routine. So this is the time that you can actually call someone who's your customer and ask them, what do you think of my product? What can I change about it? There's certain things that you can do in terms of reflection on how the business looks. But all in all of this are just assumptions based on what we do. I think being in the startup world, we live in the world of assumptions. And validating those assumptions.
Well, I think they're very valid assumptions, so to speak, because as it is right now, I think for the first time, the entire globe is just focused on one particular problem. All efforts seem to be driven towards getting a solution to this problem, and whatever solution someone will come up with that might lessen the impact of the virus spread and eventually getting things back to normal would be considered appropriate by would-be investors or even maybe potential founders who are brainstorming some of these solutions. So I think maybe this would be a good time to focus on building ventures or basically tweaking a product or a service that is geared towards, solving the problem at hand, which is impacting everyone. So could be moving from brick and mortar to e-commerce kind of service delivery. Digital, getting all money into a digital wallet and enabling transactions.
Exactly.
Anything in healthcare, technology that would enable screening, testing, and just trying to look at how humans gather socially and what would enable them to still feel like it's doing the same thing they've been doing over and over, but in a safe way. For example, can we build a platform that would enable groups of people in different places to watch a movie and have conversations, that sort of thing, from their homes? And I think, it's valid that entrepreneurs would need to think through this problem and find solutions around it.
I think so. But I guess all in all, the self-isolation and quarantine and all the measures that have been taken are great for the environment. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain this after, but again, we are human beings and we tend to forget too fast. But I think just to add, and in terms of how then can we support startups and other smaller businesses in the time of Corona, I think the biggest thing is coming up with a clear communication strategy. For talking to all the stakeholders within your business. These are your employees, these are your partners, these are the consultants who work in your company, these are your customers, your investors. I think a communication channel is key to keep that relationship alive. You would see even in the personal life that we have or our social life, you start seeing people having conversations saying, is this person really my friend? Because now we don't talk anymore just because we don't see each other. Or, so there's a lot of reflection on who's important and who isn't. And maybe this is the time to get rid of the dead contracts and, think of what the new ones look like. Be clear, be consistent. And just think of the future. What does it look like? And do like a scenario modeling for your business and say, okay, if this happens, if we don't get out of this in the next X amount of time, this is what we will do if we don't. And I think collaboration is key for me. I think that is where I've managed to stay sane in realizing that there's someone in my network who needs this kind of support and I'm willing to do it for them and just get things moving. So maybe it's the time for founders not to be loners. This is the time. This is the time I can get Frank on a phone call.
Yeah, sure.
because we are always so busy, and now you can get to take a chill pill and say, can we have a conversation for 30 minutes on X and Y? And it's
fair. So there's probably a silver lining, right?
I am a very optimistic person, and I'm always solution driven. So I try and see that. But of course, there's the whole annihilation of the human race as it is, which is sitting at the back of our heads.
Yes. Apocalypse.
Yes. We have had a lot of this doomsday scenarios in a lot of the movies that we watch. So but I think all in all, there's more that can be done by government to support small businesses, at least in Africa, because I've seen in other countries that the taxpayer isn't as brutal as our taxpayer. Governments are offering waivers, and they're offering extra wages for small business owners, and that makes me think about our own government, who haven't said anything about small businesses. So it's one thing to say that you are sending out a decree for banks and all these places to, think about small business owners, but kwa ground vitu ni different.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the one of the biggest concerns people have is if we might, if it so happens that we find ourselves in a position whereby we have to have a complete lockdown.
Yeah.
Considering that our entire economy runs or is being run by small businesses who live from hand to mouth.
True.
Are we ready to mitigate the impact of that? Getting someone who works in a construction or maybe works in the construction business to stay at home for a week, how do you expect them to feed?
Exactly.
It's I think it's important for the government to come out now while things are still kind of normal and come up with solutions. Let's start finding ways early on before things get out of hand.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that government needs to consider, and even bigger employers. And I think this is the opportunity for a lot of these people to change their narrative, especially towards small businesses. I think small businesses, startups have felt very oppressed by the system and policy, and there's no one saying, in terms of public health, we're having daily updates on that. In terms of the economy, we're having almost every other day, we're having updates from the central bank, but no one is saying anything about businesses. What next? So we are just in limbo and hoping that this dies out. But at some point, if we are indoors too long, then I foresee that this is going to be bigger than what it has been for the past 1 week. Yeah. So.
Do you see a particular or maybe a specific opportunity for social entrepreneurs at this point?
I think this is the right. My business being an impact business, and looking at the opportunity for that, I think Africa is a good space for impact, and it's just an execution. But it's going to be very difficult for social entrepreneurs as well, because a lot of this, the people at the last mile are people who can't afford to be indoors, and we are really constrained on physical contact and that interaction. So it's just the people who are in the social entrepreneurship space need to really think fast on their feet on how will they be, especially on how to disseminate information to the people that they're willing to create impact for. How will this information get to them? How will you create a system that allows your business to, create impact at the last mile? And there's businesses that I've seen in Europe and in the States who say, for example, their model was, if you buy a cup of coffee, then you get to give a gift to someone who needs it. So in my head, I'm like, it would be nice to have those kind of things happening, where if I'm swiping at Carrefour and I'm swiping X amount of money, am I buying bread and milk for someone else? Do we have that kind of thought process and thinking about the people that are supported when we're talking about social entrepreneurship? So I think the issue is, yes, this is an opportunity for people in the social entrepreneurship space to create change and make an impact, but also how then do you get to these people? So coming up with a communication channel for this. I watched a video of someone in Western Kenya who was on a motorcycle with a megaphone and, giving this public service announcement on how people should take care of themselves during Corona. And for me, that's a social entrepreneur for me, because he's on his bike, he's on his own, he is communicating to the people in the language that they understand. Now, if we are sitting in our houses and not figuring out how to communicate, then for me, it would be a bit, I don't know, I don't want to call it pretentious, but I wouldn't find it in good jest if the social entrepreneurs will come out after all of this is done. I look at the Wangari Maathai. Wangari Maathai, even if the government was out there looking to beat her up, she still went out and fought for the environment and protected our spaces. So I think we need to move beyond our business model canvases and all of this and get out, and not really get out. I don't know. So it's a very weird place to be.
We need to take initiative despite the challenge. And bring up, something that will be able to impact society at large.
Yeah. So I guess it's just, it's an opportunity for people to think outside the box. I think that's the thing. This coronavirus is going to make a lot of us think outside the box. Like if I was going to teach kids how to code, kids in whichever slum that we like talking about to code, how am I going to do it now? Don't these kids still need it? How am I going to do it? So this is an opportunity to just get out of the box, stop being comfortable, stop talking about the same thing on your pitch, be real. I think that's the thing I'm getting at. Can we just be real? This is an opportunity for us to just get down back to reality. The reset button.
I think you've already taken the initiative, and this is something I think you did before this entire scenario escalated. You started a project called Bizna Club Membership. Could you expound on what exactly it is and what it's doing?
I think, that's a good place to then engage this conversation on. So Bizna is just a couple of us were like, what is the best way that we can support small business owners? So we started that towards the end of, the conversation started just as soon as we started the year. And then in February, we were able to mobilize a lot of the founders and business owners. And the goal for the Bizna Club is to start thinking of how to engage amongst each other. One, around information and how you, and this comes back to also when a Kenyan most of us, when we want to start businesses, the first place we go to is Google. And when you go on Google on, tips on how to start a business, tips on how to do XYZ, we never really find locally viable
tailored
content.
Information.
So the content that we are able to access is never homegrown. Yet we do have people who are management consultants, service providers in this space who are really good at that. So this is a place for us to consolidate that information, that homegrown information, and find the best way to share it with business owners from a central place.
Okay.
So that was one of the things. So building the club was about getting two sides of the scale. One, the business owners. Two, the service providers. But from a due diligent point of view. So how can we be able to say, hi, Cooperative Bank of Kenya, we have 200 businesses. These businesses are already due diligent. Can we have access to the money that can help them grow? But for that to happen, we need to facilitate those conversations and, come up with a guide for businesses. And this is because this was also inspired by the fact that a lot of the people who run these businesses do not have the privilege that you and I have of internet, of having access to networking events. These are people who just got into business through maybe they just stumbled upon it, or just life took them to starting a business. And so most of the time, because there's a gap in that information on how to set up, how to run, how to grow a business, then we miss out on all these opportunities. You walk into the Women Enterprise Fund, they say, we have all this money, we can't give it to you because you're not viable. You walk to the Youth Enterprise Fund, we have 200 plus million that has not been used because we can't give it to you because you're not, you're high risk. You go to the bank, oh, sorry, we can't give you this money because of all these roadblocks that have been created by existing in a traditional world, how then can we create an informed epicenter of businesses that have the same needs beyond just meeting each other and sharing a laugh here and there? Can we then understand what these people, especially around access to finance and access to markets, what do we need to do to then support these businesses in accessing X opportunities? Because they're there. So that was one of the goals that we had. And also coming up with a business directory that we've already started putting together, where you can start seeing who's doing what are they, what's the synergy that can be found from this pool of people. So that's definitely one of the things that we've been working on as the Business Club, in seeing how can I access someone in logistics. This is everybody who's in logistics. This is how they operate. This is how legit they are, because also we have the challenge of how do you know the right person to conduct business with? So creating that center point of access to other people who are doing something that can help your business grow faster. And so, and finally, beyond that is start offering meeting opportunities, because also you need to be around people that think like you. And this is beyond, of course, I love going to panel discussions. I love attending talks. I love attending conferences, but sort of bringing it back in and realizing that sometimes I might not know everything, and creating an environment where we are able to share amongst us on our experiences and put it out there. What I must add is we have the Bizna Kenya website that already has a lot of, it's been there for over 5 years. And we're beginning to start to use this platform for visibility. Because this is also another thing that small businesses do not have the privilege for. If I do not know somebody in X mainstream media, then no one will even know that I'm doing something remarkable.
That's true.
And so that's also, we're going to use the means of, having this website to give visibility to businesses that are doing something interesting. And, I think that's the best way that we can grow as a unit. So for Bizna, I think the goal for us is people, build the people. So we've built the people, over 200 in less than a month. We've been able to mobilize over 200 entrepreneurs. And we have more who are interested, not activated yet. In fact, we have almost the same number who are like, great, you just let me know when this starts. And we can be able, so using that approach to then activate access. That's how I can summarize Bizna. Access to legal, access to finance, access to markets, access to government, access to policy, access to share, because also beyond the many walls of Nairobi, how well do we interact with businesses in Nakuru, in Mombasa, in Kisumu? How can we foster that relationship that then we have? Of course, we're not going to target all the 80% of small business owners in the country, but we can, even if we target 20% of that number, then we can begin having a ripple effect and a voice that's unified in one way or another. And this can influence policy. If at the back of my head, this is one of the things that have, Corona has affected for me, because I'm like, we were going to have our first meetup. I don't know if I want to do it online. I don't know if online is enough for the first meeting of all these amazing people with amazing minds. So there's a bit of that. And in my head, I'm like, these are the people who would have ignited the conversation for policy to be shifted or adjusted to accommodate small businesses. Of course, we have other people in the space. We have ASEC, which is an association of startup and SME enablers in Kenya, which has been put together. But for that to even move, we also need to have a consolidated voice from the business owners as well to plug into this resource. So there's a lot of resources, but there is no communication. No one's talking to each other. So what we decided the business club was going to be, let's talk amongst us. Let's figure out what our voice is. Let's figure out the value. And then now we can project this to all these key stakeholders. We are looking at the Chamber of Commerce. We are looking at the ministries. We are looking at KEBS. We are looking at KEPSA. All these people who can play different roles to make running a business in Kenya easier.
Yeah. I think you've made very impressive progress in just a month, getting over 200 businesses on, at least to start to engage. And, the statistics that we've been reading over the past couple of years is that over 80% of small businesses barely see past their third birthday.
True.
I feel whatever you're bringing together with the business club will try to lower that number to ensure that more small businesses are able to survive beyond year 3. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, and so far, how's the engagement going? Are they understanding what you're trying to do and the impact that will come out of it for them going forward? Do they see it? Because I think one of the reasons maybe a lot of businesses fail is because not many people who engage in entrepreneurship really have the right resources, the right skill to run a business. So far from your engagement from the 200 plus businesses, do you think they are able to see the impact going forward?
I think one of the things that I've been able to identify as bigger, because we did a bit of surveys and asking what value would you like to get and from this setup. I think the biggest one was in terms of information and capacity building, because as a small business, you are possibly the only person running the business or a very small team, and sometimes you get overwhelmed. And you're also stuck in trying to pay your own bills, keep the business afloat. And this is one of the factors that lead to the business collapsing. And one of the biggest things I've seen as response and feedback is we want to know more. We want this guidebook. We want access to people who we can trust, people who are, who know what they're doing. So one of the things is creating that pipeline of trust and transparency, which is something that we're really lacking in our general ecosystem. That I will probably work with X person because they're recommended by another person. And that's the only level of trust that I would have. But making this more transparent and accessible is something that we've seen that the businesses are very hungry for, and would definitely play a huge role in reducing that time from 3 years even to 1 year, and maybe even no years. We want to see the businesses survive. We want to see a scenario where a business can have a merger with another business. That's how business is done, that I will be able to see that Frank is doing something that is complementary to what I'm doing. And if we work together, have an actual merger, we can actually do this so much better. And get more of our businesses into the IPO, So that's the direction that we want to look into in making business, much easier than what it is right now. And I'll give a scenario of people say who's running, I don't know, maybe someone who's in the auto industry, selling cars or, maybe selling cars. So this guy is really good at selling cars. And then someone, comes and says, hey, I can build a platform for you to sell the cars better and faster. Then what does this person do? He then spends another 6 months trying to build this, for their own company.
Yeah.
Yet there is X other entrepreneur sitting on the other side who already has a working platform, who can consolidate and put all these people with different auto, companies onto his platform. So you start seeing the fact that everything is so decentralized, then things take much longer and the frustration is even higher. So by making this, a bit more transparent, I think it would be much easier for people to focus on what they're really good at and not, start relearning and rethinking their wheel, which is something we as Kenyans are good at, myself included. When I was starting, I know someone would be like, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, of course I can do it. And then I go like on Google and I'm like, can I do this? How do you do this? And then it takes me like 3 months to deliver. And and I'm lucky sometimes that I am able to deliver. So that's a chronic Kenyan problem of, of course I can do it, and we can't do it. But realizing if I can work with the next person, the next person who can do this in a week, then we are more efficient. So that's how I envision the club growing, in terms of transparency, in terms of visibility, in terms of, highlighting the amazing people out here who are brilliant at what they're doing, and then engaging the service providers and government to mobilize resources for growth.
Yeah. I think we're in certain quarters we are known as the hustler nation, which basically means if someone is bringing a business opportunity to you, you don't say no to it, even if you don't have a clue whatsoever of how to go about it. Just take it up and go figure it out on your way.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that attitude has made a lot of people mistrust each other when it comes to any kind of business or engaging into something new with people you don't know. Because most people have failed in delivering, and I've been talking to a friend who's been looking for software developers to build for him a platform he's been working on for about 2 years. And he keeps telling me that every time he throws money at these people, they make grand promises, but never deliver. He's almost giving up. He's actually looking to side. And I've been trying to tell him, look, you just not be looking at the right place.
Exactly.
So I think if Bizna as a platform can enable trust amongst parties who even don't know each other, it will make business run more seamlessly, and there's a lot of engagement, because I know there's also a lot of people who would like to do things, but they're very skeptical about the local ecosystem. Who's the right person to? How can I trust them? Is there like a rating system which I can refer to, and a forum where people can back me up as someone who's very good at a particular field? I think that way we will be able to build a lot of trust and create more business opportunities for our local enterprises.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll see how all of this goes, but generally, I think in terms of what the business team is doing, putting together a proper communication strategy, and just how best will we communicate the midterm and the long-term goals to then build this network. I guess the biggest challenge is, of course, where we are now, and we were really dependent on a lot of the conversations being offline than online, because online we do already have a very vibrant way of communicating. So is there a way that we can move this offline? So I guess in terms of the team, it's thinking about how can we do this differently if we are going to be stuck indoors for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, finally, Kitawa Wemo is best known to be the founder and the executive director of Mama Ventures.
Yeah.
Could you take us through the journey of Mama Ventures? Why is it there? Who does it serve? How has it been so far? And what kind of impact have you had to date?
Yeah. Great. Wow, Mama, I could go all day for this one. Yeah, so I founded Mama Ventures in 2016, and this is from transitioning from a world of public health. And in my public health role, one of the biggest things I needed to do was create programs that are centered around sustainability, because in the nonprofit world, at around 2013, 2014, there was a lot of conversation on how can we begin to make communities more sustainable and less dependent on funding and grants from different governments and different donor agencies. So that really did create the best foundation for Mama to grow and start, because it did expose me to a bigger opportunity of within the community. There's a certain mindset that had already existed. And so I had to make the call. Should I try and change mindset in the nonprofit space, or do I just transition and see where a bigger need is for the type of programs that I was creating? Yeah. And so the bigger need was definitely around the nonprofit, the for-profit space with the startups, because at that time I did about 9 months of research. This is in 2015 before I decided to start, and having conversation with startup founders, both locally, regionally, and globally, on the challenges that they face in setting up and around sustainability and, of course, impact. And so one of the biggest things is the number that you just mentioned previously, that 80% of small business owners do not get to see their third year. Yeah. And when I went deeper to find out why, and this was, of course, between the idea and market, a lot happens. There is lack of information. There is no knowledge of the partners that are needed. There is a lot. So what my team and I did is we designed then an entrepreneurship toolkit that then we would use with founders. So how I did that is I used to run dedicated networking events where we would have founders coming, and we do thematic themes like marketing, branding, legal, finance, everything that you kind of need when you're starting. And from here, then we'd be able to identify solo founders and have these conversations with them, take them through the toolkit, and see if we can actually reduce the time that it takes them to get to market. So that has been the goal for Mama from the beginning. How can we help solo founders get to market faster and more efficiently and in a more cost-effective way? So after that, then we realized it was a bit hard. We were getting overwhelmed with seeing solo founders. Okay. Because the numbers were growing, the interest was growing, our team was severely understaffed, and we had to rely on external consultants as well. And so it started getting a bit overwhelming. So in 2017, going to 2018, then we started working with different accelerator programs, NILAB being one of them, in running the same program now in a more classroom setting. So we would take up to 30 entrepreneurs and take them through 3 months of this program and see how we can help them get to market faster. And within these 2 years, so 2017, 18, 19, and now 20, the biggest challenge for me was also starting to identify what exactly do we need to do as Mama beyond the facilitation and supporting and the training and consulting for different accelerators and incubators. What is the one thing that cuts across these spaces? So we finally opted to brand ourselves as a venture builder, or rather a company builder. And the products that we had designed and validated was a risk and impact assessment tool. So startups are able to get a risk scorecard that tells them how risky they are and give them interventions on what they can improve in their business to then get to market faster. And even if it's not to get to market, then also attract the right type of investment at the right time. Because as a venture builder, a lot of our conversations are also linked to investors. Because we build companies that get invested in. That is how we make our money, in terms of some companies give us a percentage of their company shares, and then others gave us a percentage of the investment raised. So those are the two ways that we do get our revenue. And so one thing that cut across for both the startups and the investor was a risk and impact assessment tool. So that's become one of our biggest products for individual founders that we headhunt for, founders who approach us, and founders who we work with in accelerators and incubators. At the moment, we are handling two programs, one being the Tech Bridge Invest, which is originally from Norway and now has set up a hub in Mombasa. We have a satellite project in Nairobi, and they also have one in Kampala. Then the second one being Africa Yes, which is more social entrepreneurship program that is based in Nairobi. So using the risk and impact assessment tool as a precursor, then you start seeing more interest, not only on the investor side. The investors are more happy because they're saving, up to $5,000 and up to 3 years of looking for the right business by working with us. And then the startups are also more motivated to actually build and identify where they need to grow at what point. And so you start seeing more people are excited about building, about setting up, about, talking to investors. And we've been able, so our track record actually is 6 months. So we've cut down 3 years, the amount of time it takes a Kenyan startup to get to market from 3 years to our average is 6 months. So in 6 months, a lot of the startups that we work with are already in market, already have users, have a prototype, are even in the process of raising money.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. And the final thing that we've just set up is a Women in Tech program in partnership with different players. And it's a very interesting one. I may not be able to reveal everything about that, but it definitely answers the question around the gender gap in technology. So we've seen a lot of women in tech programs, but when you get down and dirty, you don't really find much going on. So we decided to set up something that's very action oriented, that's very company builder oriented and product oriented. So we're very excited about that as well.
Is Mama focused, or is it open to all kinds of businesses, or is there a particular area that you're looking at?
I think to answer that question has taken me 2 years. It's taken me over 2 years to answer that question. But the most exciting type of businesses that we like focusing on is idea stage businesses.
Okay.
In technology. So tech, early stage, idea stage. In fact, if you don't have a prototype, you're the best person for us to work with. And then, but beyond that particular set is then the SMEs who need support in terms of just the general business development services, because that's much easier for us, because that's what we did in the first 2 years when we were starting. So that's something that we have mastered and we do very easily and very efficiently. So that also is a space on its own. So, but if you go onto our website, you will definitely find that we are very female founder focused, very technology driven, very idea driven, and impact. So that's the gist of what we focus on. So as long as you have an idea, and you would like to introduce an aspect of technology in your business, and you would like to build a product that supports women, or you have a predominantly female team, that's really, really exciting. But that's not to say that we don't work with other businesses. And maybe to just cap it all, and I know I get this question a lot, mama means female. So do you only work with female businesses? No. So
you that
yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you only focus with female-led entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Oh well, I mean, the name is definitely it stemmed from the nurturing aspect of a mother. So
Okay.
so and that's what we do. We do nurture businesses from when they're really young, and they need weaning, and they need to be bottle fed, and they need their diapers changed. That's how I describe it. Until they're independent, able to eat on their own, and they're able to do all these things on their own, then we do set them off. Some of them still have attachment issues, so they still retain us. But that's the best way I can describe our business.
That's very impressive. I think that's what we had to cover for now, unless you have something to promote.
I don't know. This is a tough time to promote anything. But what I do have to say is we'll be doing our 10-year strategy launch as soon as everything settles. You'll be able to hear more about all the things that we have planned. We are in the process of building our impact fund in partnership with different investors that we've met along the way. So that's because we realized if we're going to be a venture builder, it's also important for us to begin investing in the businesses that we build as the first people that interact with the idea. So we are setting that up. We're still in the time of Corona, still having those conversations with the investors. And, it's a very tough one. Are you still in? Are we still doing this? Are you still coming? Yeah, so there's that. But also, if there's any companies that need support in terms of human talent, human capital, we've run a global impact program for the past 3 years. That's actually very successful. And so how it works is we do support small teams with technical support for their growth to get to their market faster. So if you're... Yeah?
That's under Mama?
Yeah, that's under Mama. Okay. We've run this for about 2.5, 3 years, actually. So our first ever company to work with was 3 years ago in 2017. And we've had different, and it's not just a student program, it's including business consultants who are willing to give their time and expertise in supporting small businesses and startups in Kenya grow. Because our goal has always been to get startups to market faster and efficiently. And so that's one of the reasons why we have this as one of our programs. And in the time of Corona, the only thing I can promote is my time. If you want to start a business and you're struggling, feel free to send me an email or ping me. I know I'll give Frank my email address, and he can be able to. You can reach out for some free info. We are donating our time now, because it's all we have.
That is really appreciated. Thank you very much, Kitawa Wemo. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you, and I hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you so much, Frank. I really, truly appreciate you having me here. And in such tough times.
I really appreciate it.
Asante.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.